Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us Across the Fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. For many Vermonters, recycling is nothing new. Even before there were laws, people found ways to reduce, reuse, and recycle. Now recycling is the law, and the law is expanding to include food scraps. So this afternoon, we're going to learn about reducing food waste and how to turn it into compost. Joining me are two guests. Anne Bajour is with the Waste Management and Prevention Division of the Agency of Natural Resources. And alongside Anne is Cassandra Hemingway. Cassandra is the Outreach Manager for the Central Vermont Solid Waste Management District. Thank you both for coming in. And well, there's a lot of spring cleaning this time of year, and certainly part of that is recycling. And give us a baseline. I was rather shocked when I found out how much food waste there is in Vermont and everywhere, really.
Yeah, it's a problem both in Vermont and nationally too. It's actually really excessive. Estimates show that between 30 to 40% of food grown in the U.S. is wasted, never making it from the farm to someone's fork or their belly. So what does that actually represent? It's 63 million tons of food every year, and it's such a large number, it's hard to comprehend. So to help visualize it, we always tell people that it's about enough food to fill a huge college stadium every day, so to fill like the Rose Bowl every day with food that doesn't get eaten.
And that was at organics at the bottom, so in terms of waste, it's a big hunk.
Yeah, so that chart showed kind of Vermont's trash bag, our residential trash bag, and you'll see in the bottom that the organics represent about 28% of what goes in our trash every day. And that's not all food waste, that's also leaf and yard debris. But it actually is 60,000 tons of food for Vermont goes into our landfill every year.
So what's the problem with putting food and organics in the landfill?
So there are really three, I like to think of it as three primary reasons that it's a problem. One is that landfill space is limited. I don't know if you know, but Vermont only has one working landfill up in the Northeast Kingdom in Coventry. And so if we're putting that 60,000 tons in the landfill every year, that's taking away valuable space for other trash needs in the future. And then the second reason that most people don't understand is that food waste contributes to climate change. When organic materials go in the landfill, they get packed down and there's no oxygen that can enter that space. And so the microorganisms that usually use the oxygen to break down the waste can't do their job. So as a result, methane is generated. And methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas. It's about 25% more powerful than carbon dioxide.
So, very good reason to get it out of the landfill. And what are your recommendations on how people can reduce food waste just right off the bat before we even think of composting?
Well, the first two things I like to tell people are just eat what you buy. It's very simple. And then buy only what you need. So it's whenever it's best in your schedule, it's good to kind of sit down and make a plan. What are the meals I need to cook this week? And well, okay, so this chart right now is, or this graphic is showing you that a family of four spends $1,500 a year on average on food that they don't eat.
That's astounding.
It's crazy. So just by doing a better job of eating what you buy, eating what's in your fridge, in your pantry, you can save money and also do all these other things, save landfill space, save resources, because there's all these resources going into getting the food from the farm to your plate. And if those go in the trash, then they're also wasted. Yeah.
So Cassandra, what should viewers do with the inevitable? There's some food scraps, even if they do leftovers and they're eating that. What do we do with our food scraps?
There's a variety of options. I'd like to suggest that the first thing to do is think about your food waste as a resource. A lot of us think yuck and ick and there's all of that, but actually they are a resource. They can be animal food or turn into soil or even turn into energy. So that said, on a practical level, people can actually drop off food scraps at every transfer station in the state at this point. And at some of them there's a fee, but it's just like you pay a fee for recycling or trash. There's also other drop-off sites at some of the commercial composting facilities will accept food scraps, typically for no fee. And of course, they can compost in their backyard. And some people have chickens. You can feed your food scraps to your chickens. Most people are already doing that who have
have
animals.
chickens. They're already into that cycle.
Yeah. And a lot of our commercial scale composting facilities are often also feeding chickens in addition to creating soil and compost. But composting in the backyard is one of the most popular ways that people are managing their food scraps.
So if people are composting in the backyard, so that's great to know that we can already take it someplace.
Right.
But if you're composting, what goes into compost and how is it best done at home?
Sure. Well, there's ingredients. If you think of it like a recipe.
Okay.
One of the ingredients is your food scraps. That's a nitrogen rich, or what we call a green. And then the other ingredient is, we call it a brown, but that would be anything carbon rich like wood shavings or leaves, or even shredded paper, or even like shredded egg cartons if they get soiled. It's really important to have both of those ingredients. So if you're adding your food scraps to your compost bin in the backyard, you want to also make sure you're adding those browns.
Great. So you do that, and we just saw a couple of bins. You can do it just on the ground if you want, but these bins are really terrific. There is a cone one. Here it is.
Yeah.
And
so the green cone is ideal for managing your meat scraps. One of the things you want to keep out of your backyard compost is meat and fish and bones, because that's really hard to manage in a backyard system.
Right.
But a green cone is partially buried. The materials are digesting. They're not composting. And they are fully enclosed, so animals don't get into them for the most part. Occasionally, there's a little issue, but typically green cones stay unbothered by animals. So for someone who has meat scraps that they want to manage, a green cone is a great option.
that's terrific to hear.
Yeah.
Well, I don't do that. So people don't want to compost at home, and or because they don't have the space or whatever. Talk to us about, there are community compost places. Tell us about those.
Sure, yeah. Community compost sites are popping up all over the state right now. They've been in development for a couple of years. And just to be clear, a community compost site is not a place where everybody in a town can drop off food scraps. It's specific to, say, a community garden or even a housing. Like one of our sites in our district is a 36-unit senior housing site. So it's an on-site compost system, but people can just drop off. They don't have to actually do the composting if they don't want to. It's a great way for people who have mobility issues to still be able to manage their compost. Often neighbors will help neighbors with it.
Great. So just check in about what the requirements is of each of those community compost sites.
Right.
And I love that turning, because one of the problems I have is turning my compost.
Right. I wanted to talk about that, actually, that image of the big tumbler. Tumblers are great systems as part of a full system. So if you have a tumbler and you're not turning it enough, which is always hard to remember, it's still a great way to start your compost. But I always recommend people also get a bin that they line with hardware cloth to keep animals out. So you start your compost in a tumbler, then put it in a bin to finish. It's very unusual that you'll get finished compost out of a tumbler.
Right.
So.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you keep talking about animals. What about composting in bear country quickly? Is that a
Do you want to
problem?
speak to that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Sorry, Ann, go
I
ahead.
guess the main thing to remember if you live in bear country is to remove what might be attracting the bears to your yard. So often we find that that's bird feeders. So we've been working with Fish and Wildlife to help educate people that once springtime comes around and those bears are hungry, they're coming out of hibernation, put away your bird feeders, because you don't want to bring them, attract them to your yard. And then you want to compost in one of those hard enclosed bins with a lid that would be hard for a bear to remove. And then the main thing is you want to keep the odors down. So like Cassandra was saying, every time you add your food scraps, you want to add more of those browns. So the dried leaves, the yard waste, sawdust, wood chips. And
Important
then,
for odor too.
Yeah, mix it all up, but make sure that you're keeping a layer of those browns on top, because that'll keep the odor down.
Right.
And then just one more thing to remember: you don't have to compost meat and bones, and because that also could bring the critters to your house. So you can put those in the trash.
That's okay.
The universal recycling law allows you to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And transfer stations, where do they take food scraps? Where do they go?
So we have now 13 certified organic facilities in Vermont, and they're all over the state, actually, from as far as St. Albans and Linden down to Bennington and Brattleboro. So it hopefully is more convenient for transfer stations to bring their food scraps to those sites, or people too.
And then finally, we're almost out of time, but this turns into wonderful compost. So you can get it and use it for your garden and everything else. So and you can get it from these transfer stations and other places.
Yep, and you can spread it on your yard. You can share it with your friends.
Fabulous. So I'm going to give you some resources for more information about composting. You want to check your the website on your screen. It's 802recycles.com. Great site there. It has composting and recycling information for every city and town in the state. So again, 802recycles.com. I want to thank Anne Bajor.
Thank you.
And Cassandra Hemingway.
Can I also say vtrecycles.com will also give you lots of information on composting and other resources too.
Awesome, Anne. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard.